Féin Vice President Michelle O'Neill. I spoke to her earlier. Michelle O'Neill, to start with, why should people vote for Sinn Féin in this election?
Well, good evening, Paul. Great to be back on your programme as part of the local government election cycle. I think that this election is going to be hugely important and very significant for voters to send a very clear signal to endorse positive leadership at a time, I think, whenever people need it most. It's a vote in terms of a returned assembly, a fully functioning assembly and executive. It's a vote to return hard-working councillors that will work very hard to deliver local services. I think it's a vote to invest in our health service. It's about supporting people through the cost of living. And I think that the 18th of May is a very crucial date in terms of an election that really endorses that message of hope and opportunity, and for a party that is looking towards the future.
When I look at Sinn Féin election posters, it's your photograph that I see. You're not standing. So what is the Sinn Féin strategy here?
So this election comes very hot on the heels, obviously, of our last May very historic Assembly election, and the outcome of that election is still to be respected. And that's quite frankly what's coming up on the doors. That's what people are talking to me about. It's that bigger picture politics. It's about a reformed executive. It's about having locally elected ministers dealing with all the issues of the day. So for me, it's about a re-endorsement of last May's Assembly election result, but it's also about sending that very clear signal to endorse positive leadership, because I genuinely believe people out there, they want hope, they want optimism, they want to know what we're going to do to invest in their children's future, how we're going to look at the opportunities that we have now in front of us, and there are many opportunities in front of us.
So for Sinn Féin, this is about making good on last year's Assembly result?
Well, I think ultimately it's about restating that position, and also it's about saying that they want politics to work and they want political parties that can work together. They want us to be in the executive, and they want a local executive that can support our local councils and local councillors that are returned to actually deliver good services for them.
It's also a good motivation to get your vote out there, isn't it?
Well, I mean, that's our job in the political world, to try to motivate people to come out to vote. But I think that, I often hear people downplaying the election and perhaps saying it's downbeat. That's not my experience in the door. And I've been in many doorsteps, I've been in community centres, I've been in schools, I've been in local businesses, and I'm talking to people, and they're repeating to me that they want politics to work here and they want us all to be working together. And I'm determined to try to deliver that. I'm going to not give up. I always say to people, don't worry, I have your back. I am trying my best to get an executive back up and running again. And I think that's what people are going to vote for in this election.
And that's what you're hearing on the doorsteps?
That's absolutely, day and daily.
Sinn Féin has made no secret that it wants to be the biggest party in local government here. Is this about the dominance of Sinn Féin in that case?
No, it's about making politics work. It's very much about endorsing positive leadership. I myself try to bring that positivity every day in everything that I do. I encourage that of all of the Sinn Féin team. So this election is about electing those hard-working councillors that are going to deliver good local services, but are part of a wider team. Of course, we want to come back as the largest party of government, but not just to hold position. It's actually what you're going to do with it that's going to make all the difference to people's lives. So for me, this is about that bigger picture politic. It is about an assembly and executive working. It's about investment in our health service. It's about what can we do to support families with childcare costs. It's about how do we get people through this cost of living period. And it's about fighting back against Tory austerity that's hurting so many people right now.
Well, you've punched a number of buttons there, so I'd like to deal with those in turn, if I may. Your party has had the finance brief twice. You couldn't get a budget through. Now we're in such financial straits. You must take some responsibility for this.
Yes, we have had the finance brief, and actually Conor Murphy was the finance minister that brought forward a draft budget before the DUP walked away. And that very budget actually was, for the very first time in many years, a 3-year budget that prioritised health, that gave the lion's share of our funding of public services to the health brief, which clearly needs that investment. Even today we have a story in the headlines where that this unadulterated Tory budget is going to lead to a decision where 300 nurse training places could be cut. Now that is diabolical, and we will pay the benefit, feel the pain of that, and the public will feel the pain of that for many, many years to come.
Is the bottom line not that we need to be paying our way here?
I think that I often hear this debate about, the hard choices. We did make very hard choices. The choice to protect workers and families, the choice to ensure that no more bills were put through the post boxes of our households who are really struggling to get through this period with the cost of living crisis. So it's not about, public services. This place isn't funded properly. So all the parties should be working together to face back against the Tories, to push back and to say we need properly funded public services, because we've had 12 plus years of Tory austerity that has hurt the public services to the biggest detriment, and the public feel that in our education service and in our health service and in all of our public services.
There will have to be reform. I think there's little doubt about that. Will you back water charges?
No, I won't back water charges because I won't back putting more costs onto households that are really struggling to get through this period. Let's join together as political parties and as political leaders and fight back against the Tories. Let's take our case to the Treasury for additional fiscal levers. Let's take more control into our own hand. Let's not punish the public for Tory austerity and the mess they have in London.
But if there isn't money in the kitty...
Yes, but I think what we need to do is we'll have this election on Thursday, the 18th of May, and immediately after that, not one day longer, the executive should be reformed and all the parties should be facing together against the Tory austerity agenda, fighting for public services, fighting for the public that are going to return us in this election.
I hear what you're saying. You want no charges, you want no cuts, but you can't be populist forever here. You will have to make hard decisions at some point.
There are hard decisions being faced by families every day. There are families who are sitting today around their kitchen table worrying about how they're going to put food on their table. They're worried about how they're going to keep their lights on, how they're going to heat their homes. There are schools wondering about how they're going to get support to those children that need additional needs. There are families out there who are worried about how they're going to pay for their childcare bills. These are tough decisions for households and families. And what we have is a Tory austerity agenda that's hurting all those services, that's hurting workers and families. And that's why the DUP needs to join with the rest of us, come in around the executive table, join forces and fight back and push back against this agenda.
You can't continue to go to the Treasury cap in hand if the money isn't there or if they aren't going to give it to you.
I don't think this is about cap in hand. How we're funded here, the money that comes from England to this local executive is not appropriate. It's not fit for purpose. So yes, we need additional funding, but how we use that funding is crucially important. We need to reform our health service. We need to invest in public services. We need to ensure public sector workers are getting fair pay and conditions. All those things are really, really important, but how we're funded is not sufficient. So the job here of political leaders is actually to come together and fight that case together. Conor Murphy established a fiscal commission. So far from running away from hard decisions, we actually want to take more levers, actually bring in more income, but do it in a way that allows you to invest in public services.
If we want more money in the kitty, so to speak, surely we're going to have to find that ourselves. Some of it, yes, the vast majority will come from the Treasury in London. But is there not going to be a responsibility on you and people like you to say we are going to have to grasp this nettle, we are going to have to make some charges somewhere?
But people already pay their bills. People pay their taxes. They're entitled to fair public services. They pay their taxes the same as the people do England, Scotland and Wales. Why shouldn't they have good public services?
Because in Wales and in Scotland, they are actually able to raise their own taxes.
Yes, exactly. So they have additional fiscal levers. Conor Murphy established a fiscal commission that would give us additional levers that would allow us actually to properly look at how we raise additional funding and how we're able to invest that in public services. That's where we need to be. That's why we need the executive up and running, because we have to be able to work together. Because there's one thing, you have to agree what powers we want to, additional levers that we want to have. Then we need to have a political agreement around that, and we need to make that case to the Treasury. But we need to be in the executive today, making good decisions, the hard decisions that actually support workers and families and local businesses in these times.
Was your presence at the coronation about gesture politics?
No, it's very much about the future. It's about respect. It's about me fulfilling my promise that I would be a First Minister for all. I don't just say that, I actually mean it. And I think that in these changing times that we live in, we all can hold dear to our own political allegiance and our own outlook. But let's be respectful of each other in these times of change. And for me, attending the coronation was to show that I will be a First Minister for all, particularly for those people in our society who have a British identity and look towards monarchy.
Well, let me draw you on that, if I may. It's likely that the next election will be to Westminster. After attending the coronation, surely you don't have the excuse not to take seats at Westminster.
Well, I would say that's apples and oranges. I think they're two very different things, because attending the coronation was about respect. It was about being a First Minister for all. It was about those people who look towards the monarchy. And for me, that's, we're all entitled to have our own equally legitimate aspirations and outlooks. Let's be respectful of that. But the Westminster attendances is obviously a very different beast. And if you look at how the Tory government have performed, if you like, over the last 12 years, they never will act in our interests. So I don't compare the two things as like alike.
But you see, wouldn't it make a difference if Sinn Féin were there, because we would hear their voice?
Do you know what would make a real difference? If we had locally elected finance ministers who could act, and economy ministers and health ministers and education minister who could be fighting our case against the British Treasury and the British government and the Tory government. One voice or two voices or even 10 voices from here in England and sitting in the Westminster Parliament will never make any difference. Never have and never will.
Well, ask the DUP that question, because once upon a time they did. And I'm just saying to myself, you would be where the decisions are being made.
But the real decisions are made by government ministers. The real decisions are made in the Treasury, particularly when it comes to funding this place. So what we need is a locally elected assembly and executive sitting with our own local ministers who will make the good case. That's where the business will be done, that's where the real business will be done, and that's where we need to be.
So what is Sinn Féin offering the electorate in this local government election?
Very much, I think this is about, as I said, I think it's about the bigger picture politics. And I think this is an opportunity for voters to have their say and to endorse positive leadership. It's an opportunity for them to say that they want the Assembly and Executive to work and to vote for parties that also want that. It's an opportunity for people to vote for locally elected, hard-working councillors who are going to work hard for local services, because local government is, by its definition, it's local. It's about local services. It's about local economic development. It's about waste management. It's about recycling. It's about leisure and recreation facilities. And we want to invest in all of those things and to work in partnership with others at a local government level to deliver the best first-class public services that we can.
But it's also a numbers game, isn't it?
Well, obviously, everybody stands for election and you want to return the largest number, but it's what you want to do with that makes the difference to the electorate. So for me, this is about, it's about reinforcing that the people want politics to work, that they want the Assembly up and running, that they want local government services, that they want their rates to be kept affordable whilst at the same time investing in their local services. And I think we can do all these things, but the best and the most effective local government operation will always be one that works in tandem with a locally elected executive and assembly.
So what would be a good election for Sinn Féin in that case, if it's not about numbers alone?
Well, I mean, obviously we want to return the largest number of councillors. We're standing 162 councillors, over 40% are women, which I'm very pleased. We've more to go, but we're certainly making good strides forward. We're also standing in areas that we've never stood before, and I believe that's really, really important, because I want to give everybody the maximum opportunity to be able to vote for Sinn Féin candidates in this election, because they are people that will turn up for them every day, that they will work hard on their behalf, and they're part of a very, very strong Sinn Féin team that are committed to driving and looking towards the future and delivering good services for everybody.
Michelle O'Neill, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, watching